to the Glam Metal Interview Series, presented by RockMusicStar.com, with host Thomas S. Orwart Jr.
Hey everyone, it's Thomas from GlamMetal.com with episode number 13 of the Glam Metal Interview Series. It is January 8th, 2021, and I just finished an interview with Cowboy Mach Bell, who was the lead singer and songwriter of the Joe Perry Project from 1982 to 1984. During our conversation, Mach and I talk about his Once a Rocker, Always a Rocker, a diary, which is a book and audiobook. In this day-by-day journal, Mach goes into great detail about his time performing with Aerosmith guitar legend Joe Perry and the ups and downs of performing over 200 shows with Perry and bandmates Joe Pett, Donnie Hargrove, along with manager Tim Collins. So here he is to tell us about Once a Rocker, Always a Rocker, Cowboy Mach Bell. Welcome, Glam Metalheads. We have a great special for you today. We have former Joe Perry Project vocalist, Mach Bell, who when he was with the Joe Perry Project went by the name, the rockin' name of Cowboy Mach Bell. Mach, how are you doing today?
Hello, Thomas. And for the truly rockin', I still go by Mach Bell.
Oh, you do? Okay, awesome. Mach Bell it is. Mach, you played with the Joe Perry Project from 1982 to 1984. You played about 200 shows with the band, and you put out this amazing book and audio book that was released in 2019. I have to apologize. It took me a while to catch on that you actually put this out, and especially with me being a big fan of the Joe Perry Project. How has the reaction been to the book so far?
Reaction's been off the charts, much more than I ever expected. But like you just said, it's a secret. You know, the book, this is an independently released book, and it's not, being advertised, or it's not really in any bookstores. So it's totally by word of mouth of Project and Joe Perry people and Boston rock people, that it's just barely starting to seep out into the world out there. So I really appreciate you having me on glammetal.com to talk, and because this is the way I'm getting the word out there is just calling up my friends on the phone and telling them, hey, I'm an author now, and this sort of thing. It's the best way, I think, to sell a rock book. Actually, it's better than buying a commercial on the Super Bowl halftime, or going on the Drew Barrymore TV show. Who really rocks and cares about the Joe Perry Project, that watches those daytime TV shows, or
right on,
or cares about some ad in between a Fritos ad? They want to hear actual people like you that have been into it for years, and they want to hear what you think about it. You checked it out.
Yeah, I did, and the audiobook is absolutely amazing. It's 11 hours, and it's so entertaining, and it's like something you can't stop listening to. It's like you really become really entrenched in the story. But it's kind of like the Titanic, where at the end it's not gonna it's gonna be a bad ending at the end. Not really a bad ending, but the band ended. You kind of you're working up, and it's you're getting so excited about the characters and everything that you created, or that you talk about all of your band members and Joe himself and you and Tim Collins and all his people. I mean, you really kind of get feelings for these people, and even if it didn't happen, even if it was an untrue story, I mean, it's still a great story. It really honestly is.
Yeah, and for anybody out there that's just hearing about it, Once a Rocker, Always a Rocker, a diary, is actually a diary that I kept.
Yes.
It's a day-by-day diary, starting with when I first, out of the blue, get this call to try out as the new lead singer for Joe Perry Project. For people that know the project, it was kind of a revolving door in the lead singing department. Joe had put out a couple albums, each with a different, really great lead singer, but for one reason or another, it hadn't panned out. And so now I get this call Joe's without a singer. He's with this new untested manager named Tim Collins, who people who listen to your show who probably follow Aerosmith know that name. Yeah, it's interesting. So it's a diary, and there's a lot of famous names like, you know, Joe and Brad Whitford and Tim, and the bands we play with, mixed in with guys like myself and Danny, our bass player, and the different road crew guys that you get to meet. And day by day, you see how the band comes together and how we go off in a van together in quest of rebuild, you know, getting a band, getting songs, and rekindling a connection with kids all over everywhere to get a fan base so that we can then get a record deal. Because along with losing his singers, Joe had also finally, for different reasons, Columbia didn't want to support Joe Perry Project anymore. One of the reasons being, I think they wanted Joe to get back together with Steven and make more Aerosmith music. So they pulled away. But Joe at that point didn't want to have anything to do with Steven Tyler, and didn't even seem to really understand what he had done in the 70s with Aerosmith and how important it was to a whole bunch of kids in America and all over the world. I don't think he was in a fog as far as all that stuff that he had created, and didn't realize the import of it. Didn't realize how new guys coming up like Slash and the guys from Motley Crue and these other bands, that was what they were learning from, and what the new rock that was about to happen was built on the fundamentals of Aerosmith so much, and Joe Perry in particular, with not only his playing, but also his whole rock star swagger. It was, you know, so it was pretty intense for us with no deal and no money and in a van, but with that actual Joe Perry swagger guy was with us. And at this point, we're living in, you know, Motel 6 and scraping together money to get food. And Joe was with us. It wasn't like he was staying in the, you know, nice hotel across the street while his band stayed, you know, lived in the van. No, we'd all check into these, you know, really dilapidated places. And Joe, you know, you would think, or I would have thought that he would have occasionally said, damn it, you know, a year ago, 2 years ago, I was playing down there at the Hippodrome or whatever the big place was in town, and now we're here at, you know, Lousy Mike's dive bar. But Joe never said anything like that.
Yeah.
Never talked about the good old days of when I was on top. He in a way, he almost seemed to really dig it. He dug being like a punky back in the van, hanging out behind the club by the dumpsters, and getting into the real rock and roll grit of it again, with no security, no record company people, just hanging out with the fans, messing with his guitars, and going out there and not having to hit the marks and play, you know, Dream On at the same time every night. And, you know, those certain tunes do kind of, you know, it's great to have hits, I bet.
Yeah.
Having none myself, I wouldn't know, but once you do have those hits, you're kind of, it's a deal that you have to perform those hits for the rest of your life. With the project, you know, it was more like a freeform punk jazz band where you just, you know, however Joe felt that night. Some nights he felt heavy metal, some nights he felt punky, some nights he felt like a hillbilly. He would pull out rockabilly, or he'd go into a whole Hendrix psychedelic night. As the kids who followed the project know, you know, it wasn't like a lot of these bands where you follow them from city to city and they're going to play blah blah next.
Right.
You didn't know what was going to happen next with the project.
The interesting part about in reading the book was that there were a lot of ups and downs. I mean, there were a lot of gigs that you did play in front of thousands of people, and there were gigs where you did play the dive bars, and you know, it like you said, you pretty much took any kind of gig you could possibly get, and I can't think of anything more rock and roll than that. I mean, that's and especially with it being Joe Perry, like you said, I mean, he was a superstar for all those years in Aerosmith, and then, you know, by the time you got involved with him, he was already on the about to make the third record. And the first record did well, the second record not as well. And then, so he was kind of like, humbled a little bit at that point.
Yeah, I guess business wise, the thing that was happening though was musically, with his musical explorations, the further he got out of the Steven Tyler orbit, the more he was able to really do his own thing musically. And whether it was successful commercially is another thing. But Joe and I were both huge fans of bands like the New York Dolls and the Yardbirds, MC5, bands that weren't necessarily commercially viable, yet that was the music that we loved, and it was the kind of thing that we brought to the project. And that's what, in my career, I always was like, no wonder I never broke through as the new Pink Floyd or Michael Jackson Thriller, because I never listened to records like Dark Side of the Moon or Thriller. I was listening to, early Mott the Hoople and the first Alice Cooper albums and things that didn't sell. That's what interested me.
Right.
So I didn't really think it through, Thomas, at the time. Like, why are you studying these bands that didn't make it? Why don't you just stick with the Beach Boys? But
yeah.
Yeah,
when getting back and with this being a book, I mean, I kind of like, I don't want to give a lot of it away because I want everyone to go out and buy this amazing book. If you're a fan of rock and roll, if you're a fan of Aerosmith, Joe Perry, this is a must-have book. I mean, you did a brilliant job with this. So I don't want to give away a lot of it. But I mean, I guess the backtrack a bit, what led you to finally, make this book, to write this book? And I mean, it's like almost been like, 35 years from the time that you, started to, the time you left Joe Perry Project.
right. That's what my literary agent, when I first finished the manuscript, I had the diary, but you can't just throw your diary on the publisher's desk and say, here you go. You've got to kind of, I turned it into a manuscript for an actual book. And there was a certain amount of fact checking and stuff. I wanted to make sure I got names of different places right, because in my diary, I would just write it however I thought it would be in my head. So one reason that I waited all those years is it's a lot easier to put together something like that today digitally than it would have been back in 1982 and 83 when I was actually writing the diary.
Yeah.
Another thing that happened was there was a time there where the diaries sat on my shelf and I didn't even want to go back to them, because when Joe quit the project and when the whole thing suddenly went from releasing our album finally after all that time and playing all these, you're right, a lot of the gigs were spectacular gigs, and playing the Sunset Strip and being the toast of the town, from going from that to just boom, it ended.
Yeah.
And it was very difficult for me mentally, and I didn't really want to look at those diaries for a long time. I was totally taken aback when not only did Aerosmith do well, but they did so well when they got back together and continued. I mean, right up until we're recording this during COVID time, but right up until last year, they were doing that residency in Vegas. They would have been on a world tour right now. Who knows what else was in store? Nothing was stopping Aerosmith. So I realized, I knew that this wasn't so much like writing a book about a lot of the other bands that were around at that time that are kind of off on a siding now, and you could mention their names and you and I might know them, but the younger people, the people at the water fountain, wouldn't necessarily know. But Aerosmith, it just is known to everybody. So
yeah,
I saw commercial potential for the first time in my life. They're actually, and then people like you had been calling me over the last years, who were doing Aerosmith books basically, and they wanted to find out, what about those forgotten years when Joe and Steven were apart, and what really happened during that time. So I'd been doing a lot of interviews for other people's books, and it was a podcaster in San Francisco, Michael Butler at Rock and Roll Geek Show had me on, and he said, you know, you got to release those diaries. For me, at least, I want to. I want.
Yeah.
And the fans of his show got back to me the day after that ran and said, yeah, we want it too. And so then that's what finally pushed me over the edge. It's a weird thing because everybody's still alive. The band didn't end where we all hated each other. Like a lot of these rock books, you know, the guy who writes it can say how awful the people he worked with were, or, you know, why the band stunk. It wasn't like that with us. And also I'm married to my girlfriend from back in those days. I didn't want to hurt her feelings. You know, you've heard the story. You know, it took me a while to figure out, how am I going to tell the story truthfully, not hurt people who are still alive, but also, you know, get into it. Because as you saw, it's very dramatic, some of the things that go on. And we were not choir boys by any means. It was a rough bunch, the Joe Perry Project. So, you know, figuring out, because there's a lot of different ways to tell any story, and it took me 35 years to figure out how to do it.
But you did a great job. You absolutely killed it. I mean, I'm not your typical Aerosmith fan. I love the Joe Perry Project stuff. I saw you guys in Buffalo in I think it was October 6th, 1983. You were playing across from my college, and it was a noontime show. So I just like had a break, went across the street and saw the Joe Perry Project. I mean, boy, what could be cooler than that? And me and we're not hearing your volume. I think your volume's off.
Am I back?
Oh, now you're back. Yeah, you're back now. Yeah, now you're good.
Okay.
And we got there early. We were the first people in the venue, so we actually saw you guys sound check, and you guys sound checked with something else. And at the time, I was just a kid, I thought it was a UFO song because it was on a UFO record like a couple years prior to that. I'm like, holy shit, they're playing UFO, and it's like we're the like only ones there. And it was Joe Perry, and you came over and you said hi to us, and it was just so cool. And like you said before, I mean, the set list was interesting because you guys played, you know, quite a bit of new music. I don't think any Aerosmith songs really. I mean, Train Kept a Rolling, which was a cover. I mean, and it was just an amazing show. And I thought the material for the record was so strong and such a great record. And I was disappointed that Joe went back to Aerosmith and didn't continue the project because I thought you guys had a lot of momentum.
Well, thank you. And I apologize for not remembering that I'd met you before.
That's all right. It was only I was so thrilled that he came up and he said hi to us. I was like, oh my God. Because I was like, I wasn't of age. I shouldn't have been there. And I was drinking beer. So, I mean, you know, I don't think they can arrest me now. But it was and it was a night that I remember like 38 years later, like as one of my favorite rock and roll experiences. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, we were lucky to be in that era where every town had their big powerhouse 50,000 watt radio station, and those radio stations would be in cahoots with the local bar across from the university in all different towns, and they would do these lunchtime concerts like you described, where the record company would arrange for us to go in there at lunchtime, and sometimes it would be broadcast live over the station, or sometimes the DJ would be there to do a talk-in, or somehow they would do a tie-in with the thing, and it was just a way, and it was free to get in, right?
Yeah, it was free. Yeah, it was free. Yep.
So, you know, whoever come on down and would pack it with kids like you that were you know, hopefully people who would go out and buy the record after they saw the show. So that was a great, you know, and we were doing that at that part. So that was right after we finally released the Once a Rocker, Always a Rocker album, which is also the name of my book. See how I cleverly.
Yeah, it was super clever. I mean, it's a great title, and it shouldn't just be a record. I mean, it should be a movie also. I mean, it's a great title, a great record, a great book. Everything's good about it.
I hope the kid who helped me out with that is listening, because I don't know who he was, and I want him to remind me, because I put on my Facebook, I said, I'm going to release this. I'm working on the manuscript for the diary finally, but I don't know what to call it. Should I call it the Diary Road Diary, or On the Road with Joe, or what? And one of the kids immediately said, "No, you knucklehead! Once a rocker, always a rocker." And whoa,
great title. And as you mentioned in the book, that wasn't going to be the name of the record. It was going to be called Round 3.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Joe had an idea. He wanted to do a front cover of the album, kind of like Rocky the Boxer, where it would be a boxing ring. And Joe was thinking about his first 2 albums, and especially the second one, and losing the record deal. So this was going to be Round 3. There was going to be a girl in a sequin dress holding up a card that said Round 3, like in a boxing match. And Joe would be over in the corner being, having the blood stitched up over his eye, or whatever they do,
Yeah.
and a little bit of blood coming out down his mouth, and a little bit beat up, but still with the gloves on and getting ready to run back out for Round 3. I was brought in. Tim heard Joe's idea, and I wish I had a picture of the look on Tim's face. And then he looks over, Cowboy, what do you think about Joe's idea? And I had to tactfully, and this was my thing often with Joe, and Tim would bring me in, because Tim did not want to say, no, Joe, that's not the way we should go. So, Cowboy, what do you think about it? And I tried as nicely as I could to say, Joe, you're a good looking guy. You're the face of this operation. And I like your idea, but I think it'd be just easier, and it would hit our market, not our market, hit the kids better, to just have a nice big picture of your face on the front of the album.
And which they did.
And I'd written the song Once a Rocker, Always a Rocker, along with Joe. It was the first song that we wrote together, so that became the title of the album.
Yeah, and not only was it your idea for the cover, but it was also your logo design that was used, which I thought was a great logo design. That is a really cool and slick looking logo. The Joe Perry Project from 1982 to 1984.
Thank you, Thomas. But make no mistake, I did not paint that beautiful logo as it's seen on the record and different. I doodled. The doodle I drew is in the book.
I saw the doodle, and I say okay, so you didn't paint it, but it was your idea. It was definitely your idea.
With the shield in front of him, with the JP snakes in the the J and the P in the form of snakes, and and then we sent it off to Brian Penry, a Boston artist who does great record covers and work for bands, and he illustrated it out. That was kind of a surprise to me. I didn't realize it was going to go that way. But yeah, I was lucky, because I love to come up. I just naturally come up with ideas. I'm a songwriter. I'm a book writer now, and back then, I like to draw cartoons and sketches. I also sketched the storyboard for our
for the video.
Hans video.
Yeah.
I would come up with ideas, and Joe was very respectful of my ideas, as was Tim. For most of them, not all of them. Some of my ideas were awful, but
well, you can't bat 1,000 all the time. But those ideas were great. Now, the interesting thing about the record was that when Joe signed to MCA dropped him before the record even came out. I thought that was like crazy and fascinating. And it was the first time I heard that. I mean, that must have been really devastating to have a record contract, start writing for a record and then get dropped before it even comes out.
Yeah, I imagine our manager, Tim Collins, was doing everything he could to keep that under wraps and not let that get out. But yeah, it was a horrible thing. We were actually, prior to the start date of recording the album, we were in a smaller studio just demoing out songs. And that's when we get the call that Irving Azoff, the manager of the Eagles, had just been installed as the new president of the label MCA. And literally the first thing Irving did was fire Joe Perry. I don't know if Joe had ever played on a gig with, or Aerosmith had played on a gig with the Eagles where they, gave the Eagles not enough room on stage, or if Irving had overheard Joe say, or I don't know if there was any kind of a personal thing. I hate to think that Irving didn't like Joe's music, because that was virtually everybody I ever have met then and have since met in the music business is a Joe Perry fan. He's a very, very well-liked musician.
Yeah.
I understand, he did have some problems with substance abuse and things like that would make, I can understand. I would be nervous to invest money into somebody that I didn't know if they were going to fall off the stage. But, in MCA's case, we weren't even real. I don't know what the deals were. I never knew how much money the band was making or anything. I was just the singer. It was Joe's band. Tim and Joe did the business. But I don't think it was like one of those deals where the company was putting up a lot of money for us, if any. It was kind of like we were delivering product to them, and just they were going to just distribute it and release it and do whatever record companies do. And in the case of MCA, it was quite a small amount. We ended up, I didn't talk about it in the diary, but we ended up hiring our own independent record promotion team to promote the record and do a lot of that stuff. Maybe that gig you saw in New York was like that, where our independent guys would get there with the radio, and because the record actually did well in some markets. We actually went to #1 out in California, up near San Francisco, and so we were breaking.
Yeah,
there.
That was an interesting thing. That was an interesting thing you said in the book. Was the fact that a lot of the radio stations did support it, but a lot of the radio stations played like different songs. It wasn't like there was just one set single. There was like 3 or 4 songs that were being played, and that just shows the strength of the record, how deep it was, and how strong it was.
Yeah, there were potential for, Women in Chains, Never Want to Stop, Adriana, Four Guns West. There was a lot of potential, and for different types of stations too could gravitate. But so that's a nice way to put it, Thomas, that it was 4 singles deep. But it's not the way they do it with a band that's trying to break in.
Right.
Like they concentrate everything on one single, and that's the one that they're all supposed to.
Yeah, it was really unorthodox. I mean, you never, hear about that. You like you said, it's always just like one song, they laser focus, and then the next single. But this just seemed like maybe because there wasn't any direction from the label to release and focus in on that one single. Was that it? Maybe.
Yeah, there was no artistic direction or help from the label, like that John Kolodner character that came in Geffen and was very opinionated, and right or wrong, he kind of streamlined Aerosmith down one path and he was, whether it was a path that all of us music lovers agreed with, it was a path that commercial radio understood, and MTV. Yeah, our thing. Yeah, I mean, we had the record was called "Once a Rocker, Always a Rocker." That was the song that we thought might hit, but Black Velvet Pants was the one that we released. Video. And if we'd had somebody guiding us, they might have said, let's stick with Once a Rocker first, do a Once a Rocker video, and then when we've exhausted that, we'll move on to something else. Maybe somebody would have said that.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of bands would need that outside voice, and a lot of bands don't have that voice. A lot of managers are afraid to get into that. You know, there's enough friction between the guitarist and the singer and the rhythm section usually that nobody wants to get into that dogfight over how should a song happen. And it's a delicate thing, but you know, a good producer, that's the beauty of a great producer or consultant, that they can come in and not necessarily say, no, that's not good, but say, you know, that riff you guys do in this part of the song, that's gold, man. Let's do more of that riff and let's expand on that a little bit. And, you know, that kind of positive reinforcement of what's good. Because, you know, when you're sculpting or painting or writing, whatever your art is, you're doing what you feel, you're doing your thing, but you don't really know, is this good? Is it bad? Is somebody going to like this painting, or is it, or am I off on a siding? It's really nice to have a sounding board, and there's not that many musical sounding boards and ones that musicians will trust.
Yeah.
Out there, at least in my case. I mean, I've been in a lot of bands that were searching for a soundboard. Excuse me. My secretary will take that.
Okay. Okay. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I do have to ask, has Joe given you any feedback on the book at all?
No. Thankfully, I haven't got like anything from his 40 lawyers, any cease letters. You know, I think that Joe's such a busy guy, between Aerosmith and the Vampires and these other, you know, hot sauces and things that he does, that I don't even know if he's aware of the book. So I haven't really heard from him. I've heard from a lot of the road crew guys from Aerosmith, guys who have been crew over the last couple of decades, who enjoyed it so much, and really it answered a lot of questions that always had, and also from a lot of guys that were around during the project, because I'm kind of a lightweight compared to a lot of the guys, and so I actually did, you know, you heard it and read it. It's a day-by-day journal, so the timeline is true.
Yeah.
See, where were we at this point and that point? And those timelines in a lot of the Aerosmith books I've read were skewed. And that was another reason why I wanted to get my thing out. I'd seen a lot of misinformation and nasty stuff about the project out there that just wasn't right. I wanted to set the record straight a little bit. And
yeah, some of the, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, some of the Aerosmith books and some of the other things I've read make it seem like Joe was just like this, like all-out, complete, 100% drug addict during the Perry Project years, and you know, was barely able to function as a human being, and that wasn't true at all.
no,
He was playing great on those records.
yeah, I mean, there was there's the first climax of my book is, you know, going out on that first national tour, and Joe wasn't ready for that, and that was kind of very dramatic scene that happened down in North Carolina. But then from there on, it was a rebuild. Yeah, those books, I think a lot of the time, you know, most of those Aerosmith books are basically the rise and fall and rise of Aerosmith. And to make it work literally, dramatically, whatever you want to call it, you know, they make the low points as low as they possibly can.
Yeah, so the phoenix rises from the ashes, right? Yeah.
Yes, it was always when I every time one of those books came out, I said, gee, I hope they write about the project. I mean, I want to know about the Ralph Mormon project on the first album and the Charlie Farron project on the second album, because I came into it and didn't really know anything about what went on. But those books never had nearly enough for me, and they usually just wrote it as, you know, things got bad, and then they really got bad when Cowboy Mach Bell comes along. You know, Joe is a solo, but as I talked to you earlier, as bad as it might have been financially and compared to the Aerosmith being top of the pops, musically and as far as a brotherhood, you know, Joe in his book said that the project, and especially the project with Danny and myself, our group, the Once a Rocker, he says was the most fun time he'd ever had in a band by far in his life.
Yeah.
A band of pirates. And I mean, that's saying something when you've been in bands with Johnny Depp and Alice Cooper and Steven and all those, you know.
Absolutely.
With me. So
I mean, just the energy that in watching some, like, you know, and then watching the video that you made for the record. I mean, the energy that he has. I mean, I don't remember ever seeing Joe Perry with that much energy before. And the concert I saw, I was like, wow, Joe has a lot of energy. I don't know if it was like, you know, because he was super excited, or if he had a coffee, or if it was something else, but he had a lot of energy. I mean, during those performances during that time period.
it's great, man. And yeah, especially then he was falling in love.
Yes, exactly. He met his wife. Yep, on the video that you helped write.
He had just produced his own album. First time Joe had ever produced an album himself. He, you know, had just put together all those great songs. He and I worked together on those. He was very proud of what we did. And yeah, he was on top of the world.
Yeah.
And yeah, it definitely reflects in his performance on that video for sure.
Right. Well, I think we're going to end there. I really want to thank you so much, Mach, for your time. A great book, and I highly recommend it again to anybody out there that's an Aerosmith. There it is, that book right there. That's the one you want to buy. After watching this, buy that book. It's also available on audio, which I listened to all 11 plus hours. Very entertaining, and congratulations, Mach, again on an awesome job. And are we going to hear from you, like, musically, like in the future or anything like that? Do you have anything planned like that?
You know, it's funny that having written the book, all these new things have reawakened, besides being able to talk to all those crew guys I was talking about from the past, and getting back together with Danny and Charlie Farron to do the audio book, which was amazing.
Yeah.
Quake Morton. I've been hearing from a lot of musicians who've been getting in touch with me and say, you know, we want to put it together a band and go out. Let's go out and hit a couple of cities and do Joe Perry project tunes and Bell tunes. And so I've been busy with the promotion of the book and things in my life. So doing a band I take it very seriously. So at the moment, I don't have that happening, but I wouldn't rule it out. And short of a band, you know, maybe some tunes or something. I haven't put anything out musically original in many years. So why not?
Yeah, go for it. All right. Well, thanks again for your time. I really appreciate it. And let's keep in touch.
Yes, definitely, Thomas. Thanks. I'm at oncearocker.com, everybody.
Yeah, make sure you check it out again. I can't say enough about this book. 5 stars out of 5 stars. Whatever you want, and whatever accolades. I mean, they're not great enough to describe this. If you're a rock fan, you have to own this book. And let's end it that way. All right, Mach. Thank you.
Good night.